The ego's ultimate disguise. Carl Jung's warning on spiritual inflation and the 5 signs you're not truly awake. You meditate diligently. You've devoured the spiritual texts, seen through society's pervasive illusions. Maybe you've even guided others through moments of personal awakening. You speak of energy, vibration, and consciousness as if they were second nature. It genuinely feels like you've successfully climbed the mountain, a monumental achievement. But Carl Jung would have something to say that might fundamentally shake everything you believe about your journey. What if your spirituality, the very thing you rely on for inner truth, isn't the genuine breakthrough you think it is? What if it's merely a sophisticated disguise, not a liberation from the ego, but a new, more insidious kind of prison built by the ego itself? In this deep, psychologically grounded journey, we're unpacking Jung's urgent, perennial warning about spiritual inflation and revealing the 5 confronting signs that you're not actually awake, no matter how profoundly awakened you currently feel. These signs are difficult and challenging to face, but if you stick around until the end, you might just discover what true awakening, the path of genuine individuation, really demands. Here is what Jung understood that modern superficial spirituality desperately avoids. Genuine awakening is devastatingly ordinary. It doesn't make you special. It dissolves the very concept of specialness. It doesn't magically bestow you with psychic powers. It removes the desperate need for them. It doesn't elevate you above others. It reveals there are no separate others to be above. But this isn't what the spiritual ego wants. The ego doesn't actually want to dissolve. It doesn't want to die. It wants to become immortal through enlightenment. It doesn't want to embrace ordinariness. It wants to be extraordinarily awakened, a revered guru, a conscious teacher, an enlightened soul. So, the ego engineers its most brilliant and final trick. It creates what Jung called spiritual inflation, pneumatic inflation. It takes genuine, profound spiritual experiences and immediately turns them into an identity. It takes authentic, cosmic insights and turns them into a sense of personal superiority. It takes real, hard-earned inner growth and immediately turns it into a basis for comparison with others. The ego doesn't transcend itself. It transcends the ordinary, materialistic ego by becoming a cosmic ego. Jung observed this toxic pattern everywhere, in various spiritual and mystical communities, from his time to ours. People have undeniable, genuine experiences, but they immediately use them to build even stronger, more rigid egos. People touch the truth of unity, but they instantly turn it into personal, egoic achievement. People glimpse the universal self, but use that glimpse to feel more separate through being the awakened one. The result is a cultural landscape where millions of people genuinely believe they are awakened, while simultaneously being more psychologically asleep than ever before. They are using the language and tools of spirituality to avoid reality rather than embrace it. They use the concept of consciousness to escape being conscious of their own flaws and shadows. They are using awakening itself as the ultimate defense against actually waking up to their full, messy, complicated humanity. Let me show you exactly how to recognize this pervasive deception if it is happening to you. Sign 1. The superiority complex. The cosmic ego. The first and most immediately recognizable sign you're not awakened is this. You see yourself as fundamentally more conscious, aware, or evolved than other people. You look out at the so-called sleeping masses with subtle superiority, patient compassion, or gentle pity. You believe, perhaps unconsciously, that you've transcended what they are still caught in. You genuinely see what they can't see. You know what they don't know. This feeling of being more awakened, that distinct sense of being ahead on the path, is absolute proof you're not awakened at all. This is the definition of spiritual inflation. The ego hasn't dissolved. It has merely expanded to cosmic proportions. You haven't transcended ego. You've created a superego draped in robes of enlightenment. You are not beyond separation. You are using the concept of spirituality to create the ultimate, most profound separation, the awakened versus the unawakened. Think about how you perceive people who aren't on a spiritual path: the materialistic executive, the consumeristic teenager, the aggressive driver in traffic. Do you see them as fundamentally unconscious, operating behind you in the evolutionary sequence, trapped in the matrix while you've gracefully escaped? That persistent perception, that need for comparison, is your ego using the language of awakening to maintain its favorite game, being special through hierarchical comparison. Jung observed that genuine individuation, the process of becoming a whole self, profoundly dissolves the very concept of spiritual hierarchy. When you truly awaken, you don't see unconscious people and conscious people. You see consciousness itself, playing every role at every level perfectly. There is no one more or less awakened, because there is only one universal awareness appearing as everyone and everything. The genuinely awakened person doesn't feel superior to anyone because they see themselves, their own nature, in everyone. The angry driver in traffic, that's consciousness momentarily forgetting its boundless nature. The greedy politician, that's consciousness passionately playing the role of separation. The unconscious masses, that's consciousness simply dreaming it is separate individuals. All of it is the same awareness. Only the masks are different. Jung worked with countless individuals who came to him convinced of their supreme spiritual advancement. They had profound mystical experiences, deep insights, sometimes even purported psychic abilities. But the moment they positioned themselves, even subtly, as more conscious than others, Jung knew immediately they were spiritually inflated, not genuinely awakened. The very need to be more conscious revealed the ego still completely running the show, dressed in a new shiny costume. The test is simple and direct. Do you ever think or feel that you are more spiritually advanced than another person? If yes, you are not awakened. You are identified with being awakened, which is merely the ego wearing spiritual clothing. But recognizing spiritual superiority is just the beginning. The next sign reveals an even deeper, more persistent self-deception. Sign 2, the experienced junkie, spiritual materialism. The second sign you're not awakened is that you are still obsessively chasing spiritual experiences. You are still seeking the next breakthrough, the next cosmic download, the next intense activation. You are subtly or overtly addicted to peak experiences, mystical states, transcendent moments, and measuring your spiritual progress primarily by the intensity and frequency of these states. Jung identified this corrosive cycle as spiritual materialism, the profound error of collecting experiences instead of material goods, but where the collecting mentality itself remains fundamentally intact. The ego that used to seek money, status, and achievement now seeks enlightenment experiences, kundalini activations, cosmic consciousness, and ego death. Same underlying addiction, just a different, purer drug. Consider your relationship with these states. Do you feel more awakened immediately after a powerful meditation retreat? Do you feel less spiritual when you haven't had a transcendent experience recently? Do you secretly compare your experiences with those of others? Do you judge your progress by the sheer intensity of your states? If spiritual experiences define your spirituality, you are not awakened. You are merely an experience junkie. Jung understood that genuine awakening ends the desperate search for experiences, not because you found the ultimate experience, but because you've definitively seen through the illusion of needing experiences at all. Every single moment becomes equally sacred. Washing the mundane dishes is recognized as being as profoundly spiritual as achieving cosmic consciousness. Ordinary reality is suddenly recognized as the miracle you were frantically seeking in extraordinary states. The addiction to spiritual experiences serves the same function as any addiction, avoiding present reality. You can't comfortably sit with ordinary consciousness, so you seek altered states. You can't be with mundane, difficult life, so you chase transcendent experiences. You can't face your full humanity, so you pursue an idealized, disembodied divinity. It is not awakening. It is escapism with a spiritual story attached. Jung observed people spending fortunes on retreats, workshops, plant medicines, like ayahuasca or psychedelics, and gurus, always seeking the next high, the next breakthrough, the next level. They'd have a profound experience, then immediately start planning the next one. The seeking never ended because the ego turned seeking into its primary identity. They weren't seekers finding, they were seekers deeply addicted to the high of seeking. One man Jung worked with had done everything. Hundreds of ceremonies, months in ashrams, years with various gurus. He'd experienced ego death dozens of times, merged with the universe, and communicated with entities. Yet he was desperately unhappy in his daily life. Why? Because regular, domestic life felt like an utter failure compared to his peak experiences. He couldn't just be. He needed to be having spiritual experiences to feel spiritual. This is the ultimate trap, using spiritual experiences to avoid life rather than embrace it. The genuinely awakened don't need spiritual experiences. They recognize that life itself is the spiritual experience. They don't journey because, in a fundamental sense, they've already arrived. They don't seek because they've found. They don't need experiences because simple existence, in its totality, is the experience. Yet, even more deceptive than chasing experiences is what we unconsciously avoid while loudly claiming to be conscious. Sign 3. The lightworker's blind spot. Denial of the shadow. The third sign, which Jung considered the most critically important sign you're not awakened, is this. You are all light and no shadow. You focus religiously on love, compassion, and maintaining high vibrations, while actively denying your natural human capacity for hatred, cruelty, selfishness, and darkness. You've become what Jung called spiritually bright but psychologically dark. Jung was absolutely adamant. No shadow work, no awakening, period. The person who claims only light is often more profoundly asleep than the individual who owns their darkness. At least the criminal or the sinner is honest about half of human nature. The lightworker, in their denial, actively ignores and splits off half of reality itself. Examine your spiritual practice honestly. Do you meditate on love while simultaneously avoiding or rationalizing your hatred? Do you practice compassion while denying your capacity for cruelty? Do you send light to the world while ignoring the persistent darkness within your own psyche? Do you focus on raising your vibration while aggressively suppressing lower, uncomfortable frequencies like fear or rage? This isn't awakening. It's spiritual bypassing of the highest and most dangerous order. Jung discovered that the brighter and more exaggerated someone's spiritual persona, the denser and darker their unconscious shadow. The teacher preaching unconditional love often harbors vast unconscious rage. The healer spreading light carries denied darkness. The guru teaching ego death frequently has the most profoundly inflated ego. The shadow doesn't disappear when it's ignored. It grows monstrous and powerful in the basement of the psyche, gaining strength through denial. Real awakening requires meeting your monster, seeing your potential for every human evil, acknowledging the liar, the manipulator, the thief, and the judge within you. You must meet these aspects, not to act on them, but to consciously integrate them. Your darkness becomes conscious power and boundary setting. Your suppressed cruelty becomes the ability to say no and protect yourself. Your selfishness transforms into necessary self-care. The shadow transforms from an enemy into a powerful ally only when it is consciously acknowledged and integrated, not when it is ruthlessly denied. The spiritual person avoiding shadow work isn't becoming enlightened. They are becoming split and increasingly brittle. Their conscious light grows brighter, while their unconscious darkness grows denser, increasing the likelihood of catastrophic emotional and moral failures. They also project their denied shadows onto others, seeing demons, dark forces, and low vibrations everywhere but within themselves. The classic psychological defense mechanism. The test Jung used is unforgiving. Can you acknowledge your capacity for everything you judge in others? Can you see the seeds of every human evil within yourself? Can you own your darkness as completely and consciously as you own your light? If not, you haven't awakened. You've just learned to hide half of yourself behind the beautiful, yet illusory spiritual light. Sign 4. The conditional sacred, escaping the mundane. The fourth sign, revealing what we conceal even from ourselves, is this. You still divide life rigidly into spiritual and non-spiritual categories. Meditation is sacred, but the office work is not. Ceremony is spiritual, but grocery shopping is not. You feel you need special, quiet conditions. Sage, crystals, Sanskrit mantras, a specific room to connect with the divine. Jung observed that genuine awakening sanctifies everything, not through effort, intention, or ritual, but through recognition. Every single moment becomes holy because you finally see that it always was. The divine isn't found exclusively in special, intense experiences. It is recognized and revealed in all experiences. God isn't reached through frantic spiritual practice. God is revealed in everything, always, already. Think about your daily experience. Do you feel more spiritual during yoga than during your difficult commute? More conscious in nature than in crowded shopping malls? More awakened during meditation than during an argument with your partner? If you need special conditions to feel spiritual, you haven't awakened to the unconditional sacredness that is constantly everywhere. The genuinely awakened don't escape ordinary life to find the spiritual. They find the spiritual hidden within the ordinary. They experience the sacred in a traffic jam, the divine in dirty dishes, and enlightenment in filing taxes. Not metaphorically, but actually. They see through the transient appearance of the mundane to the sacred, eternal core of everything. Jung noticed that people who needed special conditions for spirituality were fundamentally using spirituality to escape life. They couldn't find peace in chaos, so they sought silence. They couldn't find beauty in cities, so they escaped to nature. They couldn't find God in the ordinary, so they sought extraordinary experiences. Their spirituality was conditional, therefore it was not genuine awakening. One executive came to Jung frustrated that he could maintain spiritual consciousness during his morning meditation, but lost it the moment he entered his chaotic office. He desperately wanted to quit his job and become a spiritual teacher where he could stay conscious. Jung told him something shocking. Your workplace is your true spiritual practice. Those difficult meetings, those frustrating conflicts, those moments that make you feel unconscious. They are precisely showing you where you are not yet awake. The man wanted to escape to maintain his carefully constructed spiritual state. Jung showed him that genuine awakening doesn't need to escape anything. The office was as sacred as the ashram. The difficult colleague was as much a teacher as any guru. The spreadsheet was as spiritual as any sutra, if only he could truly see it. This is the ultimate test. Can you experience the sacred while cleaning toilets? Feel God while paying taxes? Recognize enlightenment in your enemy? If you need to escape ordinary life to feel spiritual, you're not awakened. You're using a spiritual narrative to avoid the complexity of life. The genuinely awakened live in a world where everything is sacred, because sacredness isn't added to experience. It's recognized within the experience itself. Sign 5. The need for an audience. The ego's last stand. The fifth and final sign, which might be the most difficult to accept because it challenges the performer in all of us, is this. You need others to recognize your spiritual development. You find subtle ways to let people know about your consciousness level. You drop hints about your profound spiritual experiences. You position yourself as the teacher, the guide, or the awakened being. Your awakening requires an audience. Jung identified this as the ego's last, desperate stand. The ego that couldn't get recognition through worldly achievement, wealth, power, now seeks it through spiritual achievement, enlightenment, purity. The costume has changed, but the fundamental need for external validation and performance tragically continues. Notice how you share your spirituality. Do you use specific language that signals your consciousness level? Do you share insights in ways that subtly position you as the only one who understands? Even reading this, are you thinking about how you'll share these insights later to demonstrate your superior understanding? The genuinely awakened have zero need for others to know they're awakened. They could spend their entire life with everyone thinking they were completely ordinary and feel profoundly content. They don't hide their awakening, but they don't display it either. It's simply irrelevant whether others recognize their state. This isn't false modesty. It's genuine indifference to spiritual identity. When you've actually awakened, you don't need anyone to know because you're not maintaining an identity of being awakened. You're not an awakened person. You are awareness itself, temporarily appearing as a person. Why would awareness, which is everything, need recognition from any part of itself? Jung saw this pathology constantly in spiritual communities. People competing about who was more conscious, teachers needing students to validate their own awakening, healers requiring clients to confirm their gifts. All of it revealing the ego still desperately seeking recognition, just through spiritual means. One man came to Jung proud that he'd given up everything, career, wealth, relationships, for his spiritual journey. He lived simply, meditated constantly, had transcended all worldly desires. But Jung noticed something crucial. He made sure everyone knew about his renunciation. His humility was meticulously performed. His simplicity was proudly displayed. His transcendence required witnesses. Jung asked him, if no one knew about your spiritual journey, if everyone thought you were a failure, would it still have meaning? The man was speechless. His entire path was unconsciously oriented toward others seeing him as spiritual. His awakening was, in the deepest sense, a performance. And performances always require audiences. Here is Jung's ultimate, unsparing test. If everyone forever thought you were completely unawakened, ordinary, unconscious, unspiritual, would it truly disturb your peace? If the answer is yes, you are not awakened. You are attached to being seen as awakened. The final revelation, surrender and ordinariness. Let me synthesize the profound truth these 5 signs reveal. Most spiritual awakening is the ego's cleverest trick. Instead of dissolving, it becomes the spiritual ego. Instead of dying, it becomes immortalized through the pursuit of enlightenment. Instead of surrendering specialness, it becomes specially awakened. Jung's message is clear and uncompromising. Genuine awakening looks nothing like what we imagine. It doesn't make you special, but rather utterly ordinary. It doesn't give you answers, but profound comfort with questions. It doesn't create hierarchy, but utterly dissolves it. It doesn't escape life. It embraces life in its absolute messy totality. It doesn't need recognition, because there's no one there needing anything at all. If you recognize yourself in these signs, you are not failing. You are finally seen clearly. And that is the first, most terrifying step of genuine awakening. The ego's spiritual games must be seen through and understood before real, life-changing transformation can begin. Here is what Jung wanted people to understand. The spiritual path is full of lethal traps, and the biggest trap of all is thinking you've arrived. The moment you believe you are fully awakened, you have, in fact, fallen asleep in the spiritual identity. The moment you feel spiritually superior, you have become spiritually inferior. The moment you think you've finally transcended ego, ego has subtly transcended you. Real awakening, according to the great master Jung, is devastatingly simple and profoundly ordinary. You don't become someone special. You stop needing to be anyone at all. You don't gain spiritual powers. You lose the exhausting need for them. You don't transcend humanity. You finally, fully, and bravely embrace it. Can you give up being awakened? Can you surrender your spiritual identity along with every other identity you cling to? Can you be nobody, know nothing, need nothing from your spiritual journey? Can you be absolutely ordinary without feeling like you have utterly failed? This is Jung's fierce invitation. Stop frantically trying to be spiritually awakened and simply discover what you are when you stop trying to be anything at all. In that profound, simple ordinariness lies the unconditional, terrifying freedom of the true self.